20 doctors couldn't save him, but the woman who cleaned their floors saw what they missed. His name was in Forbes. His art collection was worth more than small countries. And right now, Jonathan Rothmore, real estate magnate, art collector, untouchable titan of Manhattan's elite, was dying in a bedroom the size of a tennis court while the world's best medical minds stood around his bed, baffled. But downstairs, folding his towels with hospital corners, Amara Chen noticed something no one else did. If you think this is shocking already, wait until you hear the twist. Hit subscribe now so you don't miss it. Amara Chen was 38 years old, and she'd been invisible for most of them. Not literally, of course, but when you're a housekeeper in a mansion with 14 bedrooms, you learn to move like air, present but not present, there when needed, gone when not. She'd been working for the Rothmore family for 6 years. Before that, she cleaned offices in Midtown, sent money back to her grandmother in Trinidad, and studied nursing textbooks at night in a rent-controlled apartment in Queens. She'd been 2 semesters away from her RN degree when her younger brother got into an accident. The medical bills and legal fees ate her savings. She never went back. But here's what people didn't know about Amara. She remembered everything she'd learned, every lecture, every diagram, every case study. She'd stayed up until 3 a.m. memorizing. And she'd mastered something else too, the art of watching without being noticed. In 6 years, she'd learned Mr. Rothmore's patterns better than his own wife did. She knew he took his coffee at 6:47 a.m., not 7:00. She knew he tapped his left temple when he was stressed. She knew the exact timbre of his laugh when it was real versus polite. She also knew when something was wrong. It started 3 weeks ago. Mr. Rothmore came home early from a business trip to Dubai. That was unusual. The man worked 18-hour days and seemed to run on pure ambition and espresso. Amara was polishing the railing on the second-floor landing when she heard his voice in the foyer below, sharper than usual, irritated. "I'm fine, Catherine, it's jet lag." But Amara had cleaned up after his international trips before. Jet lag looked like exhaustion, this looked like pain. Over the next few days, she noticed more. The way he'd pause at the top of stairs, hand pressed to his ribs. The barely touched breakfast trays, the bottles of antacids appearing on his bathroom counter, first 1, then 3, then 5 different brands. And the smell. It was subtle at first. Amara caught it when she was changing his sheets, something faintly metallic, almost sweet, clinging to the pillowcases. She'd smelled it before, years ago, in her grandmother's hospice room. But she said nothing. She was the housekeeper, not family, not a doctor. Then 2 weeks in, Mr. Rothmore collapsed during a board meeting. The house erupted into controlled chaos. His wife flew in specialists from Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, Mount Sinai. The driveway filled with luxury cars. The living room became a revolving door of white coats and serious faces. Amara stayed in the background, bringing coffee, emptying wastebaskets, listening. Liver enzymes are elevated but not consistent with hepatitis. Could be an autoimmune response, but the markers don't align. Pancreatic function appears normal on imaging. 20 doctors, 20 different theories, tests upon tests upon tests. And Mr. Rothmore kept getting worse. Day 12, Amara was cleaning the hallway outside his bedroom when she heard retching. Violent, painful. She paused, dust cloth in hand, listening to the medical team murmur behind the door. When she went in later to change the linens, she saw it. On the nightstand, partially hidden behind a water glass, a small porcelain dish, the kind used for jewelry or loose change, but this one held something else. Pills. Not in bottles, just loose pills, 7 or 8 of them in different shapes and colors, some half dissolved as if they'd been in someone's mouth and then spit out. Amara's heart kicked faster. She moved closer, pretending to adjust the lamp. White oval tablets, blue capsules, one small yellow pill with an unfamiliar imprint. Her nursing training clicked into place like a key turning. She knew what prescription medications looked like. These weren't quite right. The coloring was slightly off, the coating too glossy. If this part has you on edge, hit the like button right now. It lets us know you want more stories like this. Day 15. Amara arrived for her shift at dawn and found Mrs. Rothmore in the kitchen, still in yesterday's clothes, mascara smudged beneath her eyes. They're saying maybe weeks, Catherine whispered to her sister on the phone. Maybe less, they don't know, 20 specialists and they don't know. Amara set down her cleaning supplies quietly and started the coffee maker. As it gurgled to life, she heard footsteps on the stairs. Dr. Melbourne, the lead physician from Mount Sinai, descended with his leather briefcase, his expression grave. "We've exhausted the conventional diagnostics," he said to Mrs. Rothmore. "At this point, we're looking at experimental treatments, but I have to be honest with you, his organs are starting to fail. We need to prepare for—" "No," Catherine's voice cracked, "there has to be something. I wish there was, we all do." After he left, Amara poured Mrs. Rothmore's coffee. Their eyes met for just a second, two women, exhausted, helpless in completely different ways. Then Catherine's phone rang, and Amara became invisible again. Day 17. The night shift nurse left at 6 a.m. Amara had barely slept. She'd spent the previous evening in the Queen's Public Library scrolling through medical databases on the public computer, cross-referencing symptoms. She shouldn't be doing this, she wasn't a doctor, she had no right. But that smell, those pills, the way his skin had taken on a grayish tone, the tremors in his hands that the doctors kept attributing to stress. She knew what she was looking at. She'd seen it before in her clinical rotations in a case study that had stuck with her because it was so unusual, so sinister, so easily missed. That morning, she knocked on Mrs. Rothmore's study door. Catherine looked up from her laptop, surprised. In 6 years, Amara had never initiated a conversation beyond "good morning" and "will that be all?" "Mrs. Rothmore, Amara's voice wavered, "I need to tell you something about your husband." Catherine's face shifted from surprise to something sharp, almost defensive. "If this is about his condition, the doctors are looking in the wrong place." Silence. Catherine stood slowly. "Excuse me." Amara's hands were shaking, but she'd come this far. "I think someone is poisoning him." The words hung in the air like smoke. Mrs. Rothmore's expression went from shock to anger to something Amara couldn't read. That's insane, who would?" "I don't know who, but I found pills hidden in his room. They're not from any prescription, and his symptoms, they match heavy metal poisoning, specifically thallium or arsenic. The hair loss starting at the temples, the peripheral neuropathy, the metallic smell on his skin. The doctors are treating it like organ failure, but it's—" "You need to leave," Catherine's voice was ice, "right now. Mrs. Rothmore, please. You're fired, pack your things." Amara stood there, heart hammering. 6 years of work, gone, but worse, Mr. Rothmore was still dying and now no one would listen. She turned to go. Then Catherine's voice stopped her. "Wait." Amara looked back. Mrs. Rothmore was staring at her with new eyes, not seeing a housekeeper anymore, but seeing a woman who just risked everything to speak up. "Those pills," Catherine said slowly, "where exactly did you find them?" Amara described the location, the nightstand, the porcelain dish. Catherine's face went pale. "That dish," she whispered, "Jonathan's business partner gave him that from his trip to Prague. He said it was antique for good luck." She trailed off, realization dawning like a cold sunrise. The business partner who stood to inherit the company if Jonathan died without updating his will. The business partner who'd been visiting every day, bringing Jonathan special herbal supplements, insisting they'd help with his stress. The business partner who had access to everything. Amara watched the truth assemble itself in Catherine's eyes. Mrs. Rothmore grabbed her phone with shaking hands. "We need those pills tested, now, and we need to check." She stopped mid-sentence, her face draining of all color. "He's coming here today, in an hour. He texted he's bringing Jonathan more of those supplements." Amara's blood went cold. She knew what was killing him, but no one would listen. Now they believed her, but was it already too late? "We can't just accuse him." Catherine paced her study, phone clutched in her white-knuckled hand. "Richard Brennan has been Jonathan's partner for 15 years. They built the company together. If we're wrong—" "You'll lose a friendship," Amara said quietly. "If we're right and do nothing, you'll lose your husband." The words landed like stones in still water. Catherine stopped packing. She looked at Amara, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in 6 years. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know Jonathan, not really." Amara thought about all the mornings she'd brought him coffee, the way he always said thank you even when he was stressed, the time he'd asked about her brother's recovery and actually remembered his name a month later. Small things, human things. I know enough, she said. Catherine's phone buzzed, a text. Richard pulling up now, got the good stuff for Jay, he'll bounce back, you'll see. Oh God, Catherine's hand went to her mouth, he's here. Through the study window, they watched a silver Mercedes pull into the circular driveway. Richard Brennan stepped out, 50-something, expensive suit, carrying a small brown paper bag. The supplements. We need to stop him from going upstairs, Amara said, if Jonathan takes another dose. But we don't have proof, just your theory and some pills that could be anything. Then we get proof right now. Amara moved fast. She left the study, went to the kitchen, grabbed a pair of latex gloves from under the sink, the ones she used for cleaning, and climbed the back stairs to Mr. Rothmore's bedroom. The night nurse had stepped out for her break. The room was empty except for the dying man in the bed, his breathing shallow and labored. Amara's hands trembled as she approached the nightstand. The porcelain dish was still there, but the pills were gone. Her heart sank. Then she saw it, a wastebasket near the bathroom door. She looked inside. Tissues, a crumpled water bottle, and at the bottom a torn blister pack, the kind that holds medication. She pulled it out carefully with the gloved fingers. The labeling was in check, but there was a small sticker on the back and Amara's nursing training kicked in. She recognized the chemical notation printed in tiny letters, TSO4. Thallium sulfate. Rat poison. A wave of cold fury washed over her. Someone had been slowly killing this man for weeks, disguising it as wellness supplements, counting on the doctors to miss it because thallium poisoning was so rare they wouldn't even think to test for it. She heard voices downstairs, Richard's jovial tone, "Where's the patient? I brought the miracle cure." Amara pocketed the blister pack and moved toward the door. But she wasn't fast enough. Richard Brennan appeared at the top of the stairs, the brown paper bag in hand, his smile wide and warm. When he saw Amara, the smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. "Oh, the housekeeper," his tone was pleasant, dismissive. "Is Jonathan awake?" "No," Amara said, "and you need to leave." Richard's eyebrows lifted. "Excuse me. I said leave now." His expression shifted, the warmth evaporated, replaced by something harder. "I don't think you understand your place here." "I understand it perfectly." Amara stood her ground, blocking the bedroom door. "I also understand that you've been poisoning Mr. Rothmore with thallium sulfate disguised as supplements, and if you take one more step toward that room, I'm calling the police." The silence that followed was suffocating. Richard's face went through several expressions: shock, calculation, and finally, cold rage. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have any idea what kind of lawsuit?" "She has proof." Both of them turned. Catherine stood at the top of the stairs, her phone in hand, screen facing out, recording. "I heard everything," she said, her voice shaking but steady. "Every word." Richard's composure cracked. "Catherine, this is absurd. This woman is clearly unstable." "The dish you gave Jonathan, the antique from Prague." Catherine's eyes were steel now. "You said it was for good luck, but Amara found pills in it, pills that don't match any of his prescriptions." "So she found some vitamins, that doesn't." "Thallium sulfate," Amara said, pulling the blister pack from her pocket. "This was in the trash, from supplements you brought. I can read enough check to know what TSO4 means, can you?" Richard's face drained of color. For 3 long seconds nobody moved. Then Richard lunged for the bedroom door. But Amara was already dialing 911. The police arrived in 8 minutes. Richard Brennan spent 6 of those minutes trying to charm his way out of it, his voice smooth and reasonable. "This is a misunderstanding, a tragic misunderstanding. Jonathan and I have been friends for—" "Save it," Detective Walsh said, snapping on gloves as she examined the blister pack. "We'll be testing these immediately, and if they match what's in Mr. Rothmore's system, you're looking at attempted murder." "He's dying of organ failure," Richard insisted. 20 doctors will tell you that. This is some delusional conspiracy." "Actually," Dr. Melbourne said, appearing at the top of the stairs with his tablet, We just got the results from the heavy metals panel we ran this morning. Everyone turned. Mrs. Rothmore called me an hour ago and asked us to test for thallium specifically. It's not part of our standard toxicology screen because it's so rare. He looked at Richard, his expression cold. Jonathan's blood thallium levels are 40 times the toxic threshold. The room tilted. 40 times, Dr. Melbourne repeated. That's not accidental exposure, that's systematic, repeated Dusing over weeks. Richard's lawyer arrived 20 minutes later, but by then it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming. The supplements Richard had been bringing, 6 bottles of them, lined up in Jonathan's bathroom cabinet, all with that same Prague label, were seized. The porcelain dish was confiscated. Jonathan's medical records were subpoenaed, showing that his decline began exactly 2 weeks after Richard's return from Europe. And here was the devastating detail that sealed it. Richard's own computer files, later recovered by forensic investigators, showed searches for undetectable poisons, thallium detection time, and how to mimic organ failure. He'd planned it meticulously. But he'd made one mistake. He'd assumed the housekeeper wouldn't notice, or wouldn't care, or wouldn't speak up. They'd spent years overlooking her, now they couldn't stop thanking her. Jonathan Rothmore didn't die. With the source of the poisoning identified, the treatment was straightforward: Prussian blue, a chelating agent that binds to thallium and helps the body excrete it. Within 48 hours his tremors lessened. Within a week his color returned. 3 weeks later he was sitting up in bed, weak but alive, when Amara came in to change his sheets. "Don't," he said, his voice rough from disuse. She paused, uncertain. "Sit down," he said, "please." Amara perched on the edge of the chair by the window, uncomfortable in this reversal of roles. Jonathan studied her for a long moment. "Catherine told me everything: how you noticed, how you spoke up, how you risked your job to save my life. Anyone would have." "No," his voice was firm despite its weakness. "They wouldn't have. 20 doctors looked at me and saw a medical mystery. Richard looked at me and saw an opportunity, but you saw a person worth saving." Amara didn't know what to say. "You said you were 2 semesters away from becoming a nurse," Jonathan continued, "before life got in the way." She nodded, surprised he knew that. "Here's what's going to happen. This company, my company, is going to pay for you to finish your degree. Full tuition, full living expenses, and a salary while you study so you don't have to work nights." "Mr. Rothmore, I can't." "You can, and you will." He smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him in weeks. "Because I've also decided to endow a scholarship fund at 3 nursing schools across the country, for people like you, people who have the knowledge and the heart but not the resources." Tears pricked Amara's eyes. "I spent my whole life building real estate empires," Jonathan said softly, "buildings and deals and profits, but you saved an actual life, mine. That's worth more than anything I've ever built." The news broke 2 days later. Billionaire's business partner arrested in poisoning plot. Housekeeper's intuition solves medical mystery. When 20 doctors gave up, she refused to. Amara tried to avoid the attention, but it found her anyway. Interview requests, news cameras outside her apartment, strangers recognizing her on the subway. Through it all, she kept thinking about that moment in the hallway, when she had to choose between staying invisible and speaking up. Between staying safe and doing what was right. The police investigation revealed Richard's motive. Jonathan had been planning to restructure the company, diluting Richard's shares and bringing in new partners. Rather than accept a smaller piece, Richard had decided to eliminate the obstacle. He'd used his trip to Prague to acquire the thallium, smuggled it back in supplement bottles, and spent weeks slowly dosing Jonathan's food and drinks. He'd bet on the medical establishment not catching it. He'd bet on everyone looking past the help. He lost both bets. Richard Brennan was sentenced to 25 years. Jonathan Rothmore recovered fully and reformed his company's culture, implementing new oversight and ethics training. And Amara Chen. She graduated 18 months later with her RN degree, top of her class. Catherine attended the ceremony, so did Jonathan, still a little slower than he used to be but alive and grateful. At the reception afterward, one of Amara's professors approached her. I read about what you did, she said, how you diagnosed what 20 specialists missed, what made you so certain. Amara thought about it. I wasn't certain, she admitted, but I'd spent 6 years watching Mr. Rothmore. I knew him, his patterns, his health. The doctors saw test results and medical charts. I saw a person. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Sometimes the most important skill in medicine isn't in the textbooks. It's paying attention, really paying attention, seeing people the way they deserve to be seen. The professor nodded slowly. They'll be lucky to have you on the floor. And they were. 3 years later, Amara Chen is a nurse practitioner at Mount Sinai, specializing in toxicology. She's published 2 papers on recognizing heavy metal poisoning. She teaches a seminar on diagnostic vigilance. And she never, ever makes anyone feel invisible. Because she knows what it's like to be overlooked. And she knows what can happen when someone finally decides to look. Sometimes the greatest minds wear the humblest uniforms. Sometimes the answer isn't in the medical journals or the expensive equipment or the prestigious degrees. Sometimes it's in the person who cleans the floors and folds the towels and pays attention when everyone else is too important to notice. Sometimes salvation comes from the places we least expect. If we're willing to listen. If this story inspired you, hit the like button and subscribe. We share stories like this every week. Real courage doesn't always come with a title. Sometimes it just comes with the willingness to speak up when it matters most.